Hi everyone, this is Carol Keller, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Illinois in the United States. It's definitely been a chill in the air these past couple of days, and so that's kind of sparked my interest in doing a Christmas card. I was thinking 'tis the season for making Christmas cards, so that's what we'll be doing today. And with no further ado, I think we're going to get started. So I'm going to turn the camera around to my workspace. Like I said, I wanted to do a Christmas card. So the first thing I did was decide on which paper, designer series paper, I wanted to use. When I saw the 'Tis the Season papers, they were the ones that really spoke to me. So I'm going to show you what they look like. I'm going to lay out one side here and then we'll flip them over. But I love the richness of the colors. I love that there are my shaded spruce, the darker green, and cherry cobbler, but there's also real red and garden green and white obviously mixed in. But I just love the richness of the colors, and I thought they're kind of the typical Christmas colors, and I said that's what I want to use. Those are going to be what we're going to use for the project today. Here is the other side. So again, more of the garden green and the real red, but lots of beautiful, beautiful shades of red and green. So then, once I had that decided, I also decided I was going to do strips in my card. So I thought, well, I would love to do them the long way, but I don't know. For some reason, I didn't think that was going to work. So I'm going to do them vertically. So here was my first attempt. And I also ended up then bringing in, because I knew we had a stamp set with a wreath, and that's the Arrange a Wreath set. There's one that you can stamp, and you can see I love this because you can really adapt it. It's not just for Christmas. You can use it for congratulations or birthdays, thanks, Easter even, and Valentine's Day, and there's some Easter eggs and hearts and pears even. So you can use it for any time of year. That's why I love this. And then there are dies, Wreath Builder dies that match, and that's what we ended up using today. So there are a couple of different wreaths. And then again, some flowers, and then the cutouts for the hearts and the eggs and the pears and a little dove and the word love. Lots of cute things here. So really good for all year round, which I love. Got to use those sets more than once. So that was kind of how I started. And this was my first attempt. This is not actually what we're going to be making today. It's going to be a little different. And I was also playing too with the arrangement of the colors. Should I put the greens behind the wreath or the reds to make it more contrast? So I was playing with that a little bit. But the reason that I changed from this format, the biggest reason, is that I have this beautiful little candy cane paper, and you can't see it because the wreath covers it. So then I went back to plan A, which was to do the stripes the long way. So this is actually the finished card that we're going to be making. So this is the final card that I ended up doing. And I used the Merry Christmas from that same Arrange a Wreath set. And oh yeah, and I wanted to bring that back in and talk about that too, because you'll see that the font is a little bit smaller than some of the other ones, and I think the idea is that any of these will fit inside the wreath, which definitely, as you can see, it does. And so I think that's why the font is smaller, and I knew it would fit, so I chose that one. And then for the inside, I used Celebrate the Season, and that one actually comes from the Itty Bitty Christmas stamp set. And so yes, I took, there's a lot of, obviously, they're all Christmas ones in here, but I used Celebrate the Season. And then for the back of the envelope, I used Lots of Love at Christmas, because I just didn't feel like there was a stamp. You know, the wreath was kind of big, and I didn't think there was anything that was going to work other than that. So I used that on the back of the envelope. And I'm going to show you, I'll leave this here for you to see, and we'll get started. I'll show you how I made it. As I typically do, I started with just a Whisper White card base, and I just like that because it's easy then to write on the inside. You don't have to put another sheet of cardstock in there to write because it's already light, so I like that. And then what I did was I cut the stripes, and this was the other thing too, and I'm going to bring those two earlier cards back in to show you, because the card is going to come together very quickly. I really wanted to cover the whole front, and you can see both of these have a little frame of Whisper White around the edges, but this one does not. And this is really what I was trying to go for in the beginning, and it just wasn't working. Trying to do the math and figure out, like, the long way it's easy. We know it's 4 1/4 inches, but to make the strips going this way an even width and not like a crazy weird number, crazy weird fraction, then I had to leave a border. So I was like, I like it, it's okay, but it's not really what I wanted to do initially. So when I turned the strips the other way, it actually worked out. And I will say we are going to use a little bit of a crazy weird fraction, but I'm going to show you what I did to make it a little easier. What I did was, because I basically divided out, it's 5 1/2 inches across, and to divide that out, it's, you know, a crazy fraction. So this is how I figured it out. These 4 strips are all 13/16. I know you're saying, crazy, that's a crazy thing, and it is, but I'm going to show you where it is on the ruler because it's not that hard. So I think I'm going to use my take your pick tool so I can point it out. So 3/4 is right here, and to make 13/16 you're just moving over 1 step, and I actually did it on this side. So 3/4 here, move over 1 step more, and that's 13. This is 12/16, that's 13/16. So when I put my paper, that's where I put it to, and then I cut it. And I did that for these 4. And then for this one, I made it, because it's the middle one, I made it just a little wider to cover the last of that space. And so that one is actually 2 over from the 3/4 mark. So 1, 2, it's right here. And I will show you. Line it up, and there it is right at that. 14/16. I know, crazy, crazy math, but when you're looking at it visually on your trimmer, it doesn't seem so crazy. It's not so insane. Okay. So anyway, that's how I cut my strips. And then because I turned them the long way, I'm able to see those cute little candy canes. And so I'm gonna put those on first. We'll get started making our card. Anytime I have anything that goes the length of the card, I always use my multi-purpose liquid glue, because you can move it around. Because you really want to make sure that it's right where you would like it. A little more over there. And so my first strip at the top, I can place it and move it and get it exactly at the edge, right where I want it. I'm going to double check. Yep, that's good. And then just press it down. It dries pretty quickly, but not immediately. And hopefully I won't get too much on myself. We are going to be getting a little messier when we do the wreath, which you'll see in a minute. And then I'm just going to follow the same pattern that I used over there. But honestly, there are so many of the papers that coordinate. You can pick whichever colors you want, and you can put them in whatever order you want. And it all works. And now I'm just going to butt it right up against that and make sure it goes edge to edge. So the first one is kind of the hardest, and even that's not really hard. And then the rest are easy because you're just lining them right up edge to edge. Oh, and I'm off a little bit. How did that happen? All right, make a liar on me. Well, we're going to have a little edge at the bottom. I thought I double checked the measurements. We're going to butt that up against there. Well, and I might even, in this case, trim that card down just a little bit because I really want it to be edge to edge. So I think that may be my answer. I'm just going to trim off that bottom, but I'll do that later. So I will double check the measurements though, because I don't know if what I gave you is wrong or I just cut these wrong. So I will double check those for you, because obviously there's a way to make it go edge to edge. And so the next thing I did, I first started off with, I cut out one of the little wreaths, but when I put it down, I thought, oh, it needs a little more. So I ended up cutting out 2 of them. And now is here where it's going to get a little bit messy. We're going to do some gluing. So I have my silicone craft sheet, because this is really good for when you're doing detail work like this, because I don't want glue on this because, oh, that just creates lots of problems. So all I did was put some little dabs of glue. It's very strong, so you can get away with just using a little bit. And I kind of went around where the ring is. And so now what I'm going to do is make sure it's offset. I don't want it lined up exactly. I want to move it around a little bit so that it's offset. Maybe like this. And place it right over where that ring is, where the glue is. And it will catch most but not necessarily all of it. And it doesn't matter too much because it dries clear. And so then I'm just going to press it down. So you basically want, like I said, the rings to match. See that little ring around there? You want it to sit on top of the one underneath. And it is very sticky. But that's all I want to do is just hold it together. And then I'm going to put this aside, but I'm going to leave it on the mat. And we're going to do some stamping. So I used cherry cobbler for my sentiment for my Merry Christmas. I'm going to open that up. And I just have a scrap that I used to stamp it. Ink it up. And put it about there. And then I'm going to leave this, move it to the side for a minute, because what we're going to do is just punch out a 2-inch circle, and that's what goes behind. I tried using a smaller circle, but it kind of showed, the background showed through more, and it didn't really catch the wreath, so 2 inches was kind of the perfect size. And I'm just going to center it. See, that looks pretty good. And punch it out. And so we have our inside of the wreath, but while I have the ink pad out, I'm going to do the rest of the stamping. So like I said, on the inside of the other one, I just did Celebrate the Season. That looks good. Not too much stamping on this project. And then last but not least, we're going to take the envelope. And on the back, I chose this one, Lots of Love at Christmas, because I like the sentiment, but I also like the fact that it was curved. So now that's our envelope. Doesn't that look cute on the back? I like that little message when they open it. So our envelope's done. We'll set that aside. And all of our stamping is done. So now we're just going to finish assembling the card. So I need my silicone craft sheet again, and I'm going to turn that over. And what I did was, I did the same thing that I did to put the 2 layers together, except I dotted the glue on the very inside edges because that's where the circle's going to go. So we'll just put some all the way around so that it would catch that circle and hold on tight. I'd say that's pretty good. Maybe one more here. And you really don't need a lot because once it dries, it really does its job of sticking together. And then just layer it over and center it. So I could have even gone in further. That would have worked too, but this is good. And I don't care if everyone is tucked down because it gives it a little more dimension. But that's what I did to add the sentiment. And then, I'm sure you can guess what I did next. When it's time to put this on the card, whoops, we're going to wait for it to dry maybe just a little bit more. I'm going to peel it up this way. There we go. It's not completely dry, but it'll work. What I did, what do I always do? I use my Stampin' Dimensionals. All right. So I'm going to leave it here just in case it's a little sticky, and you can see I used a scrap of paper. When I say a scrap, I'm not kidding. Had something else on there. Put a few of our dimensionals so we can pop it up on there. And the same thing, I'm just centering it here. And there's the wreath almost done, but you know, every wreath has to have a bow. So again, that's a die cut from that same set. And all I did was put just a little dab of glue right in the middle, and that's enough to hold it on because like I said, it's very strong. And you could place it here, you could place it on the side, on the top, it's up to you, but I decided I would put mine down at the bottom. Give it a press and it will, it's starting to adhere already, but when it dries it'll be even that much stronger. And then, you know, what's a card without bling? We got to have our bling. So what I did on this one was I used the Red Rhinestone Basic Jewels, and I am going to use those today. But I wanted to show you a couple of other options. You can also use the Holiday Rhinestone Basics because there are some reds in there, or the Wonderful Gems because there are reds in there that coordinate. So whatever you have on hand, those all work. And normally I just put 3 or maybe multiples of 3 when I'm putting on embellishments, but I really wanted to go all the way around the wreath because I thought that was a really pretty look. So I think I ended up with an even number. Shh, don't tell anyone, because apparently odd numbers are what you're supposed to do. But I could have had an odd number. I would have had 9 around here, but I really thought it needed one in the middle of that bow. Don't you agree? That bow needed one too. So I don't think anyone's going to be counting, so it's all good. And I just kind of randomly spaced them on the wreath. I didn't measure, I just kind of eyeballed it. So I would suggest that you do the same. You could measure it out too, but I didn't want to take the time to do that. And again, they kind of go all along where that ring is that I don't know if you can see it, but like right here is part of the ring. So I just went around that. And that's it. That's our card. Like I said, I'm going to trim off that little bottom because I don't want it there. I'll put in the description what the actual correct measurements are so that you can cover the whole card, just like this one was, without having any spaces. And, you know, if you really don't want to fool around with it, you can make all the strips at 3/4 of an inch, and then you would have a border. You just have to figure out what the border would be on the long way, because you wouldn't want it 5.5 here. It would be probably 5.25 or maybe a little shorter than that. So you can certainly do it, but you don't have to. Don't be afraid of the math and the fractions. Thank you for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. I love the fact that you watch. All right, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.